All right, guys, happy Juneteenth. Celebrate me. Celebrate me, please. If you are Caucasian, I don't know, send me $10 on PayPal or something, Venmo me. And if you're Black, I guess celebrate with me. This is the new holiday. Everyone's pretending it's very serious. And you guys know my perspective on this. Obviously, this was just handed out to Black people by Joe Biden as a little pat on the head after they destroyed our neighborhood. You know who believes me? You know who likely agrees with me? Morgan Freeman. Yeah, he's not a fan of the race game. He is still ripping into Black history. We'll talk about that. Plus, while my show was off air, when I didn't have a platform, when I could not fend for myself, Cardi B came for me again. This time on the topic of pornography. She wasn't happy about some of my tweets, and I think it's high time that I clap back. But first, the moon landing. Where are you guys at on that? Seriously, objectively, do you believe that the moon landing happened? Yes or no? Definitely did not. Let's discuss it. All that and more coming up on Candace. Okay, so we all agree that fraud, just scientific fraud, whatever you want to name it, historical fraud, it has definitely been enacted upon our society in a remarkable capacity. We're waking up to it. We see that. It's not a matter of whether or not you believe the government lies to us anymore. That's not the question. It's how long have they been lying to us? That's where we're at. And it's always the same predictable treatment. First, they lie in a really big way. Tons of people believe them. And then when some people start saying, hey, I don't believe you, they start treating those people like they're crazy. You got a tinfoil hat. How do you not believe what the government has said? How dare you not trust the scientific consensus? There are experts. And this is a really funny story. So last year, actually, I think it was a year before last year when I first tweeted something about the moon landing. I actually said, okay, guys, let's have some fun. Which conspiracy theory do you believe in? Do you think that there's actually something there? And I said, mine would be the moon landing. I just can't wrap my head around us having gone to the moon in 1969, and share with me some of yours. Nobody took me seriously at all with this tweet because I said, let's have some fun, except for a few neocons who were like, how dare she question the moon landing? And I was like, that's weird. And then last year I went on Bill Maher. I actually had a great time on his show. But when I first began speaking with him on his podcast, he instantly went in on this moon landing tweet as if this was some philosophy that I had carried with me to college campuses and talked about on my podcast. I'd never done that. But he needed me to assert on his show that the moon landing was real and that it was not a hoax. Take a listen to a brief clip from that conversation.
The idea that you could think that this was some sort of hoax, I'm sorry, but it colors everything else.
I'm just saying that, like, I'm just not, like, I feel like you're just trying to find this one. Like, I've never talked about this on my show. You're literally talking about one funny tweet thread.
It's relevant.
It's really not that relevant.
It's relevant that you won't say, no, absolutely people walked on the moon. It's relevant.
Look at that. It's relevant. It's relevant. I need you right now. You have a platform to assert that the moon landing took place, or else nothing else that you say is relevant. That's a bit odd to me. I didn't take the bait on it. I mean, I wasn't alive in 1969. And like I said, it's just not of import. So why was this something that him and his producers felt that they had to front load, that they needed me to assert this to my audience about the moon landing? You would think that that would just not be a priority for them. Well, guess what? Then, after having that conversation, I read that book, Chaos, that I keep telling you every single human being needs to read. And of course, Chaos is about the Manson murders. It is about the CIA. You will read it with your jaw on the floor. You will also be terrified as you're reading it, because if you do not believe that your government has a capacity for evil, and if you do not believe that your government has a capacity to lie on a really large scale, that book will knock some sense into you. And the Manson murders happened in 1969. What you garner from that book, among very many other things, is the fact that the government was interested in mass psychosis. What can we do? Can we create an event that will then create a mass psychosis among the population that will basically, really, ultimately get citizens to comply, to simply comply? And with the Manson murders, you had this horrific murder that happened in Hollywood to this beautiful actress, allegedly. And now we know the CIA was involved in every step of the way, even involved in the trial, even involved in the convictions. Charles Manson was a Fed. He was an asset. And the purpose, it seems, was simply to get people to stop living the hippie dream. And it worked. The hippies' days ended virtually overnight. And of course, they realized that they needed to have the media following every aspect of the trial. They needed to have the people almost performative that were in Charles Manson's family. They needed all of that. The media could get people to react as you're reading your newspaper about the horrors of this murder. What are you going to do? You're going to go buy a lock. You're not going to become a hippie. That's for sure. You're not going to be protesting against war. That's for sure. You're going to get real serious because they just used the media to mass terrorize you into compliance. And so after I read this book and learned what the CIA was up to, after I learned about drugging people with LSD, after I learned about how they utilized troops and how they experimented on troops, and I learned about MK Ultra, I can now tell you I am at a 0% belief in the moon landings in 1969. If you think that I'm going to believe that they were up to all of this in 1969 regarding the Manson murders and the CIA and experimenting with mass psychosis, but at the same time they were totally legit about the moon landings, no way. Like I said, if you don't believe me, read that book, come out of it, and ask yourself whether or not you trust that the government was above board on the moon landings. But of course, the question that people always have, two things. First and foremost, how could a lie this big pass? Well, I've answered that for you several times. The bigger they lie, the more likely you are to believe it. But perhaps the bigger question is, why lie, right? As people always say, why would the government lie to us? A global lie about COVID. Why would they lie to us about NASA and the moon landings? Why would the government lie to us about the safety of vaccines? How do you believe that, Candace? How do you not vaccinate your children? Well, the answer is always going to be power. Never doubt how big the government is willing to lie to you for power and for control. In fact, on the way in here, I was having a huge debate with my team about dinosaurs. I was just kind of walking on a walk with Savannah, my manager. And I was like, man, dinosaurs, it's a weird evolution. A giant meteor came, hit, and suddenly all the dinosaurs were gone. Tell us that pretty much in third grade. They don't really pick it back up. And of course, people are like, what do you mean? Of course, dinosaurs, it's all very real. The historians say so. The geologists say so. The scientists say so. There are fossils that say so. Tyrannosaurus Rex, they were definitely roaming the earth. Didn't you see Jurassic Park? It even got the media treatment. Okay, I don't care enough to debate that. I'm just saying that if you do follow that, let's say, no matter what it is, whether you believe in vaccines, dinosaurs, COVID, how many times are we going to put our faith in the experts and the historians and the scientists? Where do you start and where do you end in terms of your belief in them? Because you could see 30 years from now, people standing by gender theory and gender logic. That is now becoming an expert theory, right? People are going to school and they are learning this. You can pick your gender. The doctors are backing this up. They are performing surgeries to substantiate that the science is real on gender. You could be a boy, but actually a girl. It doesn't matter. All you have to do is get these surgeries performed on you, and then there you have it. And you even see that historians are going backwards to prove that actually non-binary people have always existed. Let me just show you this. That is how people are able to get degrees in this. They're learning about science, learning about history. They are learning that this is and always has been real. Which brings me to this point. In many ways, science has become a faith. It's interesting because you have so many people that consider themselves to be atheists. And they say, well, I'm an atheist because I'm rational. And I'm rational because I'm able to look at this, I'm able to study this, and I'm able to discern that this, therefore, is true. And the more that I think about that, I'm starting to recognize that in many ways, science has contributed to what I am terming a Christ conspiracy. It is the ability to convince people that faith is stupid. Oh my God, how could you believe in God? But science is definitely real. Yeah, those people don't recognize that science is now their religion. And that religion comes with sacraments. Just think back to COVID. People were lecturing us, the same thing, positions of authority, the doctors, the experts, the historians. This is how it's going to mutate if you don't do this. People were then walking around on 6-foot distancing pads. People were not seeing their family members because they were trusting the science and the experts and the people in the media that were creating another mass psychosis. Creating a mass psychosis that made people believe that they should just line up and that they should get vaccines. And when you think about that and you start studying history in the way that I had been studying history, you realize that lies like this have been told since as far back as I can look in American history. And before American history, of course, America's a very young country. In fact, when you study, you will learn that the dark ages, the notorious dark ages that they tell you about, those weren't dark at all. They were just Christian. They were ages of great Christian discovery. You can learn about that by reading an author named Rodney Stark. And then you learn about the Enlightenment. Well, let me tell you something. It was not enlightened at all. It birthed the ideas that led to virtually every ill that we are combating today in society. Marxism, communism, humanism, the philosophies that have led to death and destruction everywhere. And that all came because people said, hey, don't believe in God, believe in mankind. You are individually enlightened. Believe in the books. Trust the textbooks. Trust us when we tell you that this definitely took place millions and billions of years ago. Trust us when we tell you that we made it to the moon. Constantly believe and put faith in humans. We are the experts now. You are the experts now. Yeah, that's what I see everywhere. I see that they don't want you to believe in your soul. They want you to believe only in your mind, want you to believe only in rationality. And then, of course, they're curating that rationality. They're conducting experiments to see how they can get you to believe in anything, how they can get you to not even believe your own eyes, not even to trust your own gut, because there's an expert somewhere or there's a historian somewhere that will tell you otherwise. And that's all I'm going to say about that topic. On the topic of souls, here is a sobering headline. New estimates show that more than 1 million babies were killed by abortion in 2023. That is the highest number of abortions since 2012. The overturning of Roe only made them somehow more ravenous for the blood of babies. I mean, I view this as human sacrifice. Obviously, we have to fight back against this sort of evil because when they shout abortion, we have to be shouting life. How do we do that? Well, we lock arms with PreBorn, the largest pro-life organization in the country that sponsors ultrasounds for clinics in the highest abortion areas. Because when a mother is considering abortion and she's able to at first meet her baby on an ultrasound and hear that precious heartbeat, it more than doubles a baby's chance at life. Every day, PreBorn rescues 200 babies' lives, a true miracle. By the time I finish reading this ad, 2 more babies will have been taken by the tragedy of abortion. But just $28 could be the difference between life and death. So please join the fight by sponsoring 1, 2, 3, or 200 ultrasounds. All gifts are 100% tax deductible. To donate, you dial pound 250 and say the keyword, baby. That's pound 250, baby. Or you can visit preborn.com/Candace. That's preborn.com/Candace. All right, guys, now let's get into some stories. Before we get into those stories, I want to remind you that we are on the race to 2 million subscribers, and it's looking like it's going to happen really soon, which I'm very excited about. So hit the subscribe button if you are watching this on YouTube. So Morgan Freeman, everybody knows Morgan Freeman, mostly because I guess if you're like me, you just want him to eulogize your funeral. His voice is incredible. I don't know. He's the perfect narrator. He just speaks and we listen. And that is how he has very much made a career for himself. Somebody once asked the question, has Morgan Freeman ever been young? I think the answer to that is no. I'm pretty sure he's always been the age that he is today, the age that I remember him being in every single movie. Well, he's made his way back into the news because one thing that Morgan Freeman has always been a stalwart on is the topic of race. He has always said, always affirmed the reality that it's clear what is happening is divisive. It's always black versus white. They're constantly trying to make Black Americans feel that they are somehow different and apart from the rest of Americans. And really, that is the story of Juneteenth. That is how we got here. Following the BLM riots, it was just a little pat on the head from Joe Biden. Hey, we recognize that these riots have to end, so we're going to give you Juneteenth as a federal holiday. What an absolute nonsense. Before I tell you what Morgan Freeman is saying in this recent Variety interview that he gave, let's actually go back and listen to what he said back in 2006 in a 60 Minutes interview. Take a listen.
Black History Month, you find
ridiculous.
why?
You're going to relegate my history to a month?
Oh, come on.
What do you do with yours? Which month is White History Month? No,
Well-
come on, tell me.
Well, I'm Jewish.
Okay, which month is Jewish History Month?
There isn't one.
Oh, why not?
Yeah.
Do you want one?
No.
No, I don't either. I don't want a Black History Month. Black history is American history.
How are we going to get rid of racism until...
Stop talking about it. I'm going to stop calling you a white man.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask you to stop calling me a black man. I know you as Mike Wallace. You know me as Morgan Freeman.
He is so correct. All of it is so patronizing. And I don't know if I'm just being hopeful, that more Black Americans are beginning to wake up to it. And I think it is on the heels of the BLM fraud that was perpetuated on society. Black Americans investing in this race narrative that they never want to go away. Truthfully, they never want to go away because they need to keep Americans separated and warring with one another because, God forbid, we come together and we look up and we go, wait a second, the real issue is government. Obviously, the issue is government, and they are trying to further enslave us by different isms, sexism, racism, keep women hating men, keep men hating women, keep Black people hating white people. It is all so boring, and it is why I use my platform to stand up against it by saying I do not want anything to do with Juneteenth. I call it ghetto. I call it backwards because it's something that was just given to us as some sort of a prize that really does nothing. Another day off of school. I think that's the last thing that Black Americans need, especially when you consider the horrific literacy rates. I mean, Black American children are virtually illiterate. By the way, all American children are virtually illiterate. We need to start seeing ourselves as American. Well, Morgan Freeman, that's exactly what he sat down and said in a recent Variety interview. He said, quote, "I detest it," referring to Black history. "The mere idea of it. You are going to give me the shortest month in a year and you are going to celebrate my history. The whole idea makes my teeth itch. It's not right." He also said, "My history is American history. It's the one thing in the world I am interested in beyond making money, having a good time, and getting enough sleep." Amen. I've never had my teeth itch, but I like that expression. I'm going to start saying that when things make me upset. This makes my teeth itch. You guys want to know what makes my teeth itch? Cardi B makes my teeth itch. Yeah. Well, obviously, I guess people thought that it was just hunting season when I didn't have a platform. Everybody's talking about Candace Owens. Candace so inspired. She doesn't have a platform. Now we can say whatever we want about her. All of these headlines, all of these articles, and people were coming for me and I couldn't hit back. Well, now I'm clapping back at Cardi B. So I'll give you the background of the story. I tweeted regarding pornography this. I said, ban pornography. It's a psychological weapon intended to weaken our men. And I followed that up. As you see, it got 9.3 million impressions. People were outraged. What am I going to do without my pornography? And I wrote this thereafter. I said, pornography was created as a tool of enslavement, not freedom. It was created by the most depraved among our human race to psychologically introduce homosexuality, pedophilia, and incest, religious sacraments to Satanists, ban it, and stigmatize every person who defends or profits from it. Now, I know this is considered controversial for all of you that have ingrained in your mind somehow that somehow this is freedom of expression, that people should be allowed to present porn and to produce porn as a means of expression, that it's somehow a First Amendment right. That is utterly ridiculous. And in later shows, I'm going to take you guys through tracing the history of pornography And the individuals that made that argument in court and somehow won it, they should have never won that argument. It's pointedly ridiculous. Yes, it is a fact that pornography was introduced as a psychological weapon. Many studies have been done on how men will react to pornography, how women will react to pornography. And quite frankly, one of the greatest arbiters of pornography was a man who came right out and said that he introduced pornography as a way to subjugate Christianity. So they knew this was a weapon. They knew that this was going to tear apart families. They knew that this was going to make it difficult for people to grow deeper into their faiths. They introduced it as a weapon against Christianity. Plainly, this man says this on his Wikipedia page. Again, we're going to talk about that in a later episode because that deserves an entire episode about how they created these tools as weapons against our faith and against our culture. But of course, Cardi B saw this, and she is in many ways, I guess, a porn star of sorts. I think that, her body is always on display. And she tweeted this in response when that tweet was going viral. She said, "Oh my God, why y'all so against porn? Is it bad for y'all? I enjoy it, but I don't know. I guess it's like a 6-time-a-year thing. I personally don't feel no connection or addiction to it. Just a little quick 1-2. Nothing like real intimacy." And so I guess that makes her a cool girl. I guess the cool girls are the ones that say, oh, pornography is cool. I'm okay with it. I'm okay if my man watches porn. I watch a little porn 6 times a year. And that makes me, I don't know, hip or something. Or it makes you the exact opposite. It makes you somebody that's being used as a tool. As I have said for a long time, she is being used as a tool to promote this to her many millions of followers. And that is why I say they pick someone like her to perform on the Grammy stage, not on the basis of talent. I'm not saying she doesn't have talent, but I am saying she doesn't have the kind of talent that warrants her to be main stage on the Grammys, at the Grammys. I think we can all agree with that. And yet they pick these sorts of women. We talked about Sexy Red. The more pornographic they are in their language, the more pornographic they are in their displays, the more pornographic that they are in how they are wearing, it seems that Hollywood sends them right to the top. We love this. We love the idea of Madonna at the age of 65 twerking. And so Cardi B is one of these individuals, and she doesn't even think further than that. She doesn't think about the addictions, especially for men who really suffer from pornography. And I'm so glad that so many men listen to this show and they, in the comments, talk about how much they struggle with pornography because they are more physiologically, psychologically, biologically wired to have a response when you are producing nudity to them. And it is a fact that Pornhub intentionally offers more and more depraved topics annually. We cover it, right? They go from, sex between a man and woman. Then they start introducing incestuous topics, but it's just dress up. It's just fun. Then they start introducing transsexuals. And then they start introducing basically just skirting on the edge of what would be deemed pedophilia. Why are they doing that? Because they're psychologically trying to introduce you to these topics so that you start to believe that this is okay. So yes, pornography is a weapon. I stand by that assessment. And it's a shame that someone like Cardi B can't take a look at her life and see how maybe her life has also been harmed by pornography. Notoriously, her husband, I'm not sure if they are divorcing. I don't know what the update is on that. I know that they had filed for divorce and then there were different scandals. She's introduced at times that they're getting back together. Who knows where they're at right now? But we do know that he has cheated on her, right? And we do know that that is something that's very hurtful. So I don't say that to make fun of her whatsoever. But I think pornography, I think being introduced to so many groupies, I think being introduced to so many girls that are dressing in the way that they are could be something that is tempting for her husband, right? And so you would think that she might consider that and say, how can I help create a society that doesn't perpetuate those sorts of things? I'm not saying that if pornography didn't exist, that men would never cheat, but I am saying that I believe that a lot more men cheat because it is being offered to them, because sex is being offered to them so readily. So that's all I'm going to say on that topic. All right, guys, now let's get into some of your comments regarding episodes past. Yesterday, we tackled some of the lies regarding World War II. We tackled the fact that 12 million Germans were ethnically cleansed. We talked about the fact that Stalin was still running concentration camps. And yet we were told, at least in our textbooks, our glorious textbooks, our historians made it, we marched in there to put an end to everything bad Adolf Hitler was doing. but we locked arms with Stalin and a regime that had done far worse, had killed far more people. Does that make sense? Are we allowed to ask questions about why we would be doing that? Well, Knight of Gondo writes, "Thank you, Candace, for bringing up the ethnic cleansing of Germans from Eastern Europe. My family was forced out of Prussia, which is now split between Poland and Russia. Many Prussians and other Germans were against the Nazis. Many were still conservatives who wanted the monarchy back. Germans tried to kill Hitler many times. Operation Valkyrie, for example. Germans suffered from the Treaty of Versailles and went to the person who said that he would end their suffering. Sadly, that man brought more suffering in Germany, and now we're still taught German guilt. Germans can't be proud of being Germans because of World War II. We were villainized in World War I as well. Even though we did not start it, we backed an ally, which was Austria. Churchill wanted war and wanted Germany destroyed. Look at the Dresden bombing. Bombed civilians, many burned to death. If I want to see where my family is from, I have to go to Poland or Russia, as Prussia no longer exists, nor does Silesia, Pomerania, East Brandenburg, etc. These were German states for centuries, and now they're not. Yes, I have German friends, and when they talk to me about the fact that imagine being from a place where you're not allowed to be proud of where you're from because the entire Western world has been convinced that you are the bad guys. They've been propagandized and believing that you were always the bad guys. That's really sad. That is really sad. At the same time that we talk about, oh, we shouldn't deliver collective punishment or believe in collective guilt, we have very much assigned it. And I think that that is absolutely horrific. But there is hope, you guys. There is always hope. And this is a great time for me to tell you about a movie that I have been telling you about, Sound of Hope. Yes, done by Angel Studios, the same that brought us the Sound of Freedom, tackling topics and things that sometimes feel very heavy to talk about. And that is certainly the case when it comes to foster care. It's something that I think makes a lot of people uncomfortable. And I did see some of your comments talking about foster care and how difficult it is. Believe me, I have seen this movie, The Sound of Hope, the story of Possum, Trot. They are not going to make it seem, this is not propaganda. They're not going to make it seem like foster care is easy. What they will make you walk away with is an understanding of why it is necessary, that there are children that we need to take care of. And I want to show you guys another clip of that movie. Take a listen.
Are you sure these people want us?
I know they do. You can call me Mama. Oh, Lord.
If we can't wrap our arms around the most vulnerable, then what do we have? Noise! And the children can't take the noise anymore.
You know what I'm going to tell you guys? There is an exclusive early screening in theaters everywhere, and that begins today. So please get your tickets fast, because I'm telling you right now, they're selling out. And I'm telling you that when you see this movie, it is going to change you, just like Sound of Freedom did last summer. It will just increase your awareness of the things that is happening all around us, the awful things that are happening all around us, reminding us that we have an opportunity to, in fact, change the world by helping to change the society around us. So we need 1 million fighters to join us in theaters during the week of the 4th of July for these kids who need help. Go to angel.com/Candace to join the fight for kids. You will also be able to look at show times. That is angel.com/Candace. All right, jumping back into comments, I told you guys about Annie. She had contacted me via Connect. You guys know I love the Connect app because you can reach out to me and I can just answer you, just give you a simple voice note. I do it on my morning walks. I absolutely love the questions that I'm getting. Anyways, regarding Annie, she was a college student. She was lost and she was basically saying, I don't know why I'm here, but I feel that I have to be here. Well, Trash Camera Guy wrote this beneath our episode yesterday. She wrote, when I was in college, I had a trigonometry professor who really cared. I had a hard time in that class and would end up in tears every day. He asked me what I wanted to do with my life, and I told him I just wanted to get married and be a mom. He advised me to quit college. He told me to take some cooking classes and that I was pretty enough to bag a rich husband. He told me to get a job at a country club or something. That sounds sexist, but at the time it made perfect sense. That is exactly what I did. A year after that conversation, I was a wife, and a year after that, I was a mother. 30 years later, still married, still just a housewife. Best advice I ever got. just wanted to share that. I love that comment so much because it's true. These things are considered so sexist, but there are so many women that are listening to this podcast are thinking the exact same thing as Annie was thinking when she messaged me on Manect, and as this woman who shared her story was thinking when she was in college. What am I doing? I just want to be a mom. I know what I want to do, but society is telling me it's wrong. I've been psychologically convinced that what I am feeling that I want naturally is something that I should press away or push away. Nope, follow your gut. This next comment comes from Angelica, and it is regarding joining the military. Angelica writes, I joined the military right out of high school, left home at 18 years old to defend my country. During COVID, my eyes opened. I realized immediately how much we've been lied to this whole time. I denied the jab, separated from the Air Force, and ever since then, always wondering, whose war are we actually fighting here? Our enemies may not have been our enemies the whole time. So sad. Yes, and again, I promise you I should be making a profit off of this chaos book, but please read it because you will realize how much wrong has been done to our military, how much wrong has been done to our troops. If you think that they were not only interested in performing these sort of psychosis treatments on the population at large. Well, at first they were experimenting on our troops, and they continue to experiment on our troops. They mandate experimentation on our troops in many ways, and it's sickening and it is wrong. And it, of course, begs the question, how long have they been lying to us for? As they get people to sign up, rah, 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 go America. Well, maybe it's partially also because they can constantly perform these experiments on our troops. They know that they can. We have John Von D, who writes, lastly, I have for a very long time admittedly sneered at Candace as a conservative talking head, but given her stance on Israeli genocide, I've been so impressed. But this episode just took my breath away. I was born in California, and my mother and her family are 3 of these 12 million German people who were deported and stripped of everything in the ethnic cleansing. My grandfather was from Czechoslovakia, and my grandmother was from Hungary, turned Yugoslavia, and now Croatia. And coincidentally, they met in the same refugee camp in Linz, Austria, as Norman Finkelstein's mother and father. My grandmother's family were murdered when being told to go home to Yugoslavia. Half of my grandfather's family were sent to Austria, the other half to communist East Germany. Everything you mentioned happened to them or people they knew. Forced labor, living under bridges, starving, mass suicides, only to end up behind the Iron Curtain. The relatives didn't see each other for 60 years until the wall fell. I live back in Austria, and only here can you find monument or plaque about our people. No one believed me when I told our story in school or university in the U.S. Even quote-unquote genocide scholars in New York had never heard of it, or were even shocked and offended when it would be suggested that suffering wasn't limited to the Jews. Long story short, Candace, I am sorry for having ever sneered. You are a pioneer and you have a new supporter in me. I absolutely love this comment, and thank you. No, I have never been a bought and paid for talking head. Quite the opposite. I say what I believe. I get a bunch of flack for what I say that I believe. People will call me this, call me that. But at the end of the day, I always say I just want to be able to rest my head at night and know that I am not a liar and that I am not a propagandist. And when I learned the story of what happened to the Germans, I was sickened. I was sickened at how much I had been lied to and propagandized in school to believe that we were always just the good guys. Good guys don't allow these sorts of things to happen. Good guys do not run over the legs of children and adults simply because they speak German. The good guys don't force people out of their homes and commit an ethnic cleansing. And so this isn't to say that the Nazis were the good guys, but it is to say that history is much more complicated than they would have you believe. And it is my belief today that America is a unique psychological experiment, and that they have, at every opportunity, attempted to use the classrooms to propagandize people into believing in this very simplistic, almost cartoon version of history. This is the good guy. This is the bad guy. This is the truth. No questions allowed. And speaking of no questions allowed, the reason why Americans believed this is also because not only did they do this, not only did we commit this ethnic cleansing, locked arms with Stalin and allowed him to do this, knowing he was going to do it, but then they passed speech laws in Europe and said that you are not allowed to question World War II. You're not allowed to. They had these, you could go to prison for Holocaust denial, all sorts of things that basically said you were not allowed to question what they said was the authentic version of events. Think about that. Imagine your family being ethnically cleansed. Imagine your relatives having been lined up and shot. And if you spoke about it, you would go to prison. That should terrify you. That is why we should always be an enemy of any individual or any nation that is fighting against free speech. That is how you will always make an enemy of me. All right, ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, that is the end of another episode, but do not worry. It is Juneteenth. I will still accept your money, your finances, whatever you want to send me Juneteenth. You know what you should do? Go to clubcandace.com, and you absolutely should support the show, support our independence by buying yourself a Candace cup. Or you guys can head over to locals.com and become a monthly member, monthly subscription, so that we can keep this show independent and free. Thanks, guys. We'll see you tomorrow.